Fine.
Dina, I am honored to announce my best friend, and I'm honored to announce the best speaker that I know. So, Dina, welcome to Sabil, and we're really honored to have you.
Thank you so much, Samad, for your kindness. Thank you for your vision, for your friendship, first and foremost, for your vision with Sabil, and for having this awesome, beautiful team, Naziha and Karima, on board with this series. This is very exciting. And mashallah, Sabil is doing awesome work and just constantly growing in that. And so grateful for this opportunity to be invited and to speak with you all today. So we'll get started. And again, like Karima said, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. At some point, I may ask some questions. And so we know that when we're more engaged, we retain more of the information. So if at any certain points in time I'm asking a question, there's no issue in just kind of typing some answers in the chat and just being responsive that way. You retain more information that way, actually. So we'll get started. So bouncing back from loss and failure, one of the questions is, how many of us have experienced loss? You may be thinking just one loss. We've experienced multiple losses throughout our lives and throughout even more recently with everything happening. But if you can in the chat, this will be one of the engaging parts. If you can just type, what are some types of losses that people experience? Normally, this is very different, so I'm having to shift into into Zoom format. So yes, freedom to travel, to be with family, jobs, friendship, pets, absolutely. We've lost people, so loved ones sometimes, friends, lost a sense of security. So I'm going to kind of go to the next slide here. So some of these were already mentioned. Son getting married and moving on. Yeah, so it can even be just what the family structure looks like, or a change in the family structure. So oftentimes this concept of loss shows up with when a change happens, some type of change. Sometimes it's even our expectation of where we should be, where I should be in my life, or where I thought I would have been in my life by now, and I'm stuck with this loss of that's not a reality. So there's a gap in that reality piece. Health challenges can also pose a form of loss, people's ability to do things that they used to be able to do. So all of these forms of loss, it's part of the price we pay for being human. So it's universal, it's normal that we are going to experience loss. The question becomes, how do we handle it? What do we do? Oftentimes loss will trigger a grief response. And it's a form of grief. And when we're grieving, we are basically we're coming to terms with something that no longer is. And so there's the sadness that may come with it. And many of you may have heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who made the 5 stages of grief kind of in 1969, had identified all of this, that people go through stages, reiterating that it's not linear. People don't necessarily go in order of denial, where there's this can't be happening, and then the anger, why is this happening? Bargaining, it's sort of like okay, if this just goes away, or if I'm able to overcome this, then, or if this problem is no longer there, or if you let whatever it is I'm grieving over here come back, then I'm gonna make a change. So there's almost this bargaining of like, if then. Depression, too sad to do anything, or feeling stuck. And then at that point, she had acceptance as the final stage, which was acknowledging what was happening right now, and realizing that, okay, I've come to terms with it, and I'm sort of creating a new normal from it. But what we found, and what happened later, David Kessler is one of the people who had worked with Kubler-Ross on these stages. They added meaning. There's a 6th stage, which is the stage of meaning, and it's creating meaning out of everything that has just happened, out of the experience that a person has gone through. So this is the part of being able to finding light at the end of the tunnel, or creating a new meaning or a purpose, being able to re-examine the loss that a person has just encountered, and being able to see how it can be used to fuel a positive outlook or fuel a positive change in the person's life and in their community. We often hear of post-traumatic stress, PTSD. So many people that have gone to war, or people who have lived in times of war, have experienced post-traumatic stress, right? It's the response that the body has when there is a traumatic event, and then there can be triggers to it. Right now, a lot of research is going into examining post-traumatic growth, which is when something happens, when a traumatic experience happens, how do people come back from it stronger than they even were? So it's not even going back to the original baseline of how things were before the traumatic event happened. It's coming back, bouncing back even stronger. And I was having a conversation the other day with someone about how we deal with hardships, and sometimes when we feel broken or we feel that something has happened to us and we're no longer the same. Oftentimes we feel in that grieving of the part of us that we've lost, we feel like there's something taken away or that we're less than. But in Japanese art, there's an art called kintsugi or kuntsukori. You may have seen these. It's a bowl that almost looks like it was broken and put back together. But when it's put back together, it's not just glued back together, but what's filling each of the cracks is a precious metal. Oftentimes it's gold, but you'll notice that, and what they'll say is that the final product, right, that the product after it's been broken and put together is even more valuable, more precious. It's worth more than the original form, which never had any cracks. And so even just that piece, being able to see that everything we're going through, as we come out of it, as we grow and evolve from it, we are becoming more, we're becoming more beautiful, more precious, more valuable because of the experiences that we have with us. Normally I would have a picture, but I just thought of that piece right now. So that's why you're not seeing it. But if you were to Google kintsugi, you'll see tons of beautiful pieces of art. Oftentimes it's with bowls, but it can be with vases and so forth. And it's a nice reminder of each of those gold lines or those fillings is life experience, and it adds that value. So we talk about failure. What about failure? Who have you known who's failed multiple times? Everyone's hand, even though I can't see your faces, but I'm assuming everybody is raising their hand right now. We think of Thomas Edison often. He's the one that usually comes to mind when we think of failure. He made thousands of prototypes for what the light bulb, the incandescent light bulb would look like before he was actually able to come up with the final product and have it be a success. Can you imagine if he gave up on one of those thousands of times before he hit the final mark? We wouldn't have, or we wouldn't be where we are. We may have gotten it later, but we wouldn't be where we are today with that level of the technology piece. And so often he's quoted by saying, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work." And so our relationship with failure, we think of failure, the challenge is that people will often look at failure and they will attribute it to themselves, like, I am a failure. And nobody is a failure. We may fail at something, but even we're gonna work a little bit today on shifting our relationship with the word fail. What does it mean to fail? What does it mean to succeed? So we're going to play with that in a little bit. Thank you, Summer, for sharing the picture in the chat. Another person who, I don't know how many of you here maybe have followed or are aware of, John Wooden, who was one of the all-time, by far, like all-star basketball coaches. He coached UCLA college basketball, the men's team. They got 10 out of 10 championship titles in 12 years. Okay, and everybody's like, wow. And he's very, very known for his strategies. And that's a whole other day. We could do another talk on that. But 10 championships in 12 years, but the first championship didn't come until his 16th year of coaching. 15 years, 15 years, no championship, no title. 15 years. Who would have thrown in the towel earlier and just been like, that's it, I'm done. But whenever that shift happened, that persistence, that not giving up piece, he was able to take that team to 10 titles in 12 years. And let's not go too far. How many of you have been children or have seen children or, yeah, everybody raises their hand. Can you imagine what would have happened when the baby was crawling and they tried to stand up and they fell the first time and they just said, that's it, I'm a failure. I just wasn't cut out for this. This is just not, it's not meant to be. That's it. Gave it a shot and it didn't work. So let's just throw in the towel. Crawling doesn't look too bad. I think I can make do with this. Doesn't happen, right? There's there's a desire to continuously try to grow and try to be, try to get better. And so they stand and they fall and then they try to stand again. And then now they're leaning and maybe they let go and they take that first moment where they're not holding on to anything. And but there's this constant desire to continue to keep persevering towards something, to go to that next level. And so that's going to be kind of our invitation for us today, is to look at how we can how we can have that relationship with obstacles and with struggles, that they're there for us. Okay, so I kind of mentioned a couple of these things, but failure, there really isn't anything, there really isn't any such thing as failure if we think about it in the sense of we're learning. If it's whatever challenge is showing up in its way, it's an opportunity for us to learn something new and learn something different. They often say you either win or you learn. And so there's that sort of, it's both ways are better. I mean, both ways are good. And they'll say that a lot of the growth, like we don't learn much when we win, like when we, other than looking at what has worked in strategies, but we're not learning. That's not where the learning happens. The learning happens where there is that struggle, the lack of success, if you will. That's dictionary definition of failure. You're like, okay, but then what is success? What does success mean? And that's a question that I'll kind of throw out. You can either type something in the chat, or you can just take a quick second and just reflect on what does it mean to succeed? What is success? When we go in dictionary terms, it'll say, or you can unmute and share as well. Go ahead. No? Okay. Having peace with the day. Okay. Oftentimes it'll look at achieving, right? It's achievement. It's achieving a certain goal. That's success. Or it's meeting a certain standard. That's success. But if we were to pause and look at, yes, achieving a desired outcome. And so oftentimes though, who's determining those desired outcomes? Is it something that I've deemed for myself? Or is that desired outcome placed, that measure of success, is that placed by my family? Is it placed by society? Is it placed by my boss?
I think we can say that when we allow other people to decide what success is, that's when we can create a little bit of tension, maybe a lot of tension, because we put their thoughts of what success is above our own.
Yeah. And so that's, you know, this will be one of the homeworks that we can spend some time with, which is what do we, you know, who's sort of drawing the parameters of what it means to succeed for us, for me in my life. And so that's one of the questions. But a lot of that disconnect, or a lot of the butting heads piece, or that dissonance, that the tension that you said shows up, is when I feel like I'm not measuring up to someone else's measure of success. And I want to invite us to go back to one of the definitions that was placed there, which is having peace with the day. And I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Well, I've had a lot of thank you for your kind of counseling. And I've learned to not look at other people's definition of success. And for me, success is being peaceful at the end of the day and not having any tension that's going to disturb my ability to sleep. Sleep is so important.
It is. And we're gonna, that's one of the pieces that we're gonna focus on also and tap into. But yes, and a lot of times that sense of peace comes when we are congruent with our values. If I'm able to live a life where at the end of the day, I'm comfortable, that day was spent, I was in line with my values that I have set for myself, that's a level of success as well. And so it's not forgetting that piece.
Adina, I think maybe we could just kind of mention the bug in the room. And what COVID has done is taken the rug out from people's ability to feel they have control over what they need to do to succeed each day. The way they do their job, the way they run their household, the way they take care of their parents, the way, and so the anxiety of, I have no control, I don't know when this is going to end. I am having that problem with my 82-year-old father, who is what I call an alpha male. He must succeed, he must be the first volunteer to everything. And his little organization isn't letting him back in at 82 because yes, he's vaccinated now, thank you. But at first he wasn't going to get the vaccination. I said, Dad, if you don't vaccinate, you can't volunteer.
And if we actually go back to this part, right? Because this is, if we look at the 5 stages of grief, like everybody's grieving something, even with COVID. I mean, this is an endemic. It's not something that is related to just a certain space. Like someone had mentioned earlier, the freedom to travel, so much has changed. The way we work has changed. And in the beginning, if we go back to, right at the beginning of COVID, it was just like, oh my goodness, no, this can't be happening. It's over there. It's not gonna, like, we're not gonna be impacted. Like this isn't, this can't be. Then there was the anger part, right? Where people were feeling very, very angry over like what this means for their work, what this means for how they're living their life. And then it was just like, okay, well,
or what it means to their children, right? This is an anxiety for everyone. Everyone has children or children they love.
And then how the and what it means for all of this. And so the bargaining was like, okay, maybe if I go and I keep my social distance, like if this just goes away, if I get vaccinated, then I can kind of we can go about life as normal, quote unquote. And then again, and we're ping ponging back and forth on so many of these different of these different stages throughout. And it's like at one point there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, we're getting better. And then it's like, oh, now we got variants. And so it's this constant, it is tugging, and it's really forcing us to, maybe we haven't entirely, picked up on that meaning part. We may accept it because it's like, okay, the more we're resisting it, it's not changing the reality. It's still out there. So we're taking measures that we're able to do in the acceptance phase of, okay, I'm figuring out what is it that I need to do? What do I have control over? The meaning may not entirely be there for everybody. But I mean, one of the things we're seeing right now with the number, like with statistics, is how many people are resigning from their current roles and finding something else that they're doing. Like the doors that have opened and people really reflecting on how they want to spend the rest of their time. And so that meaning part is a part that we're constantly working with cultivating. But yeah, COVID has definitely pitched its piece where we're constantly having to reevaluate what does it mean when we're looking at failure, when we're looking at success, or we're looking at acclimating. I was reading an article the other day and it was saying that people have felt very indispensable or dispensable, I should say.
Dispensable, yeah.
Dispensable. Yes. That, okay, this is basically all this stuff happened and life is still going on outside and I'm kind of stuck here. And so it's this feeling of, okay, I can't leave it up to other people to give meaning to my life, right? Those standards of who's defining what success looks like, it's now something I have to do internally. I have to work on it internally. And if we can get it to line up with our values, that's our best bet. That's the best shot we've got in terms of figuring out how to make every single day matter and live in that meaningful realm. Fail fast is it's one of the ways they've taken the word fail and they've kind of made it a little bit fun and hip and cool. But the idea is kind of going back to that Thomas Edison example, right? It's like I didn't, I found 10,000 ways that don't work. So the quicker I'm able to, the more mistakes I make, I'm eliminating the things that don't work. And I'm learning and setting myself up to be able to get to that next level, and to figure out what does work and what is supporting me in my goals.
And I'd like to say, as a preschool teacher, teaching that early on in the child's education is really important, really important. It's so sad to see children afraid of a grade or a failure. I had a second grader wet himself because he was afraid of the test. MashaAllah. Yeah, all I tell my kids when we're taking an exam, and I hate the word, is that all this is going to do is tell us what we need to learn, what we didn't learn yet, and we'll just review and do it again. So I tried to take the pressure off that way.
That's so awesome. One of the Summer's familiar with this, but one of the leadership trainings that we do, and the ones that's done specifically with children, is there is no such thing as failure. When somebody, quote unquote, if you want to say messes up, it's celebrated. I mean, it's a whole party of like, yay, embracing that piece and really reinforcing what it means to have a learning opportunity, what it means to, because the truth is, if we're so afraid, like, we have to look at it in two ways. There's a desire to succeed and there's a fear of failure. And which one's bigger? If we're feeding into the fear of failure, those are people who are not going to even take that step because they're afraid of what's going to happen. There's like, it's being driven by fear. And oftentimes we want to protect ourselves and our image. So we're going to just stay standing still and not move. And if we're not moving, we're not getting anywhere.
And you're not sharing your gift. Every single one in this room has a gift. And that gift is meant, even if it's just sharing it with your family, your gift needs to be shared and shine your light, everyone. And
this is, I love the soapbox piece of the failure and opportunities, but if we think of the coolest video games, for anybody who's played any kind of video game, whatever kind it is, the one that basically had us glued to it was what? If we were able to master the entire game in one sitting, that's not the one we're going to go buy, but we're buying the one that has levels. And I have to maybe lose a life in this one level so I can come back and learn, like, oh, wait, there's that villain or the monster is going to show up from this space. So next time I'm going to make sure that I prepare better for it. And then we get to the next level and the next level and the next level. And the whole idea is all of these are opportunities for us to keep strengthening our muscles and just learning new things and tackling it in different ways and approaching it from a different perspective. So these are things that really allow us to keep going. And so if we can adopt that ourselves and we can practice that with our friends and our children and our families, and we can really begin to look at how can we take a challenge, how can we turn it into an opportunity? And kind of almost celebrating, like if we really take on the notion of celebrating when we make mistakes, that's one of the biggest gifts that we can give ourselves and that we can give our children, and equip them to be able to approach challenges differently. Rather than fear failure, it's like, let's approach it and see what doesn't work. And when it happens, it's feedback.
Well, now we'll go right on to your how do we bounce back. I love this bit here.
How do we bounce back? What does it mean to bounce back? It's that chat piece. What does it mean to bounce back? Have you ever played ping pong, which is our little ping pong balls over here, right? Sometimes what happens is you get the bouncing ball and you kind of like hit it first. And at first, what ends up happening, if you don't apply any other pressure on it, it actually sometimes will bounce higher than it was from the point that it started. And that's what we want to do. We want to come back stronger. And it's recovering from fear, recovering from mistakes. It's being able to be resilient, to come back from and approach life rather than come from a fear place, come from a place where we're actually seeking opportunities out. And so when we're going to talk about resiliency, because that is sort of the definition of bouncing back, and that's the muscle that we want to keep practicing. We want to strengthen it. All of these attributes and characteristics and qualities that we have, they're muscles. If we don't practice them, there's the whole use it or lose it. If you don't use a muscle long enough, it atrophies. You kind of lose that ability to, so we're constantly strengthening it, finding ways. And truth be told, we're going to have times where we may kind of slack off a little bit and forget to practice, but we come back when we can. So there's 3 C's to resilience. And this is from psychologist Susan Kobasa, came up with these 3 C's to resilience, which are challenge, commitment, and personal control. And this is sort of how we look at when we're talking about resilient people. And this is what all of us are. Because we're here, I know that we're resilient people, and we're going to continue to become even more resilient, inshallah, in our lives. But resilient people view difficulty as a challenge, not a paralyzing event. So we welcome challenges, because a challenge means that I have to learn new things. I have to rise. I have to step up, tap into my strengths to be able to overcome that challenge, versus I'm overwhelmed, I'm shocked, and I'm not going to take any action. That paralyzing event, that's not what resilient people do. They look at failures and mistakes as opportunities to grow, and that there's lessons to be learned in them. Always a lesson, if we're willing to think about it that way and just be like, what is the gift in all of this?
Let me share something. My sister had cancer 12 years ago now, and I took it on head on. I'm the older sister. The things that I learned with her 12 years ago, I am still helping people with today. And thank you, Allah, she's still alive. But that was a huge, scary challenge. She was only in her 40s, and I'm the older sister, and everybody thinks I can fix everything. That's in God's hands, right? But the information that you go and you put yourself to, and I'm committed to learning what I can. We will make it through this, or we won't, but we will have something at the other end. And then you become the light for someone else. That education cannot be taken away from you. That experience is a gift.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's the experience is a gift. You don't lose that, right? It's there. You have access to tap into it. And we do everything within our capacity. We give it our all that's within our capacity. And we know that the rest, we do our part, and the rest is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But knowing that we've done everything we can, that part is it's freeing, and it really supports us in feeling at peace with where we're at.
So if we can use that to define success, we will be able to sleep at night.
Absolutely. The other C is commitment. They are committed to their lives and their goals. They have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, right? It's not just, okay, I want to succeed at work. Like, work is a piece, but there's something like, what makes us get out of bed in the morning? What excites you about your life? What fills your heart with joy? And that can be relationships, that can be friendships, that can be certain causes, right? If there's this cause, like, what is your life purpose? That can be one of the things that gets you out of bed in the morning. Our spiritual connection with Allah, right? Some people, what gets them up in the morning is that opportunity to have that one-on-one personal time, intimate conversation with God. It's their time that may get them up in the morning. And so whatever it is, it's finding what are you committed to? What is your commitment in your life? As a resilient person, you have something that gets you up in the morning. Gratitude journal to see where you're looking forward to each day. Yes, that helps to solidify it and to put it into words. And then the third C to resiliency is personal control. Oftentimes, something happens, people by default will go into what went wrong, why didn't it work, and they'll focus on and ruminate on the aspects where they have no control over. And so shifting it into what is it that I have control over, and really focusing on that aspect. There's a lot of things we don't have control over, and all that stuff is outside of us. But if we're going to stress ourselves out with and consume ourselves with those things, it's not going to help. It's going to actually hinder us from growing. But if we look at, okay, I can't control traffic for the most part, right? I wake up in the morning, I can't control traffic. I can control what time I leave the house. I can control which avenue I'm going to, or which road, which path I'm going to take to get to work today. And if I focus on those pieces. But if I'm focusing on something outside of control, a conversation I have to have with someone, or a situation that may be between me and someone, I can't control their reaction and their response, but I can control mine. And so what are the things that we have control over? This helps us kind of, we get to harness our power of, here's where I have a say in my life. And there's a ton of things I'm not able to really have a say in, but this is what I'm able to do. And that helps us build our self-confidence, and it helps us feel more excited about taking action. Okay, perfect. So we're going to dive right in and we'll go through these quick, but there's 10 ways, and these are pretty quick, and then we'll kind of open it up to discussion, inshallah. And you mentioned something about sleep, and sleep is key. So these are going to be 10 tips that we can kind of build and enhance our resiliency. There's 10 points we'll get into. You don't have to sit there and have a checklist every single day of all of them, but we want to maximize what we can do in any given day. So relaxation, we know research, tons of research available on how important it is for us to sleep and get quality sleep. So the quality of our sleep is sometimes more important than even the number of hours, and to relax our bodies throughout the day. We can do this with, exercise, if it's safe for us, finding an exercise that helps us relax, doing deep breathing meditation. Some people will find a relaxation in their prayer. And so all of these are forms that we want to make sure that we're tapping into it. It allows us to cope more effectively with stressors that happen in our lives. Thought awareness. So the relaxation part is kind of going into our physical body, but this is now going into our cognitive capacity. So if we're tracking our thoughts, right? What are we saying to ourselves? What is our self-talk? When something goes wrong, are we ruminating over what happened and how awful I was and what I could have done differently? And what, I should have known better. How could I put myself in this situation? This always happens to me. It's never a good idea. I should have known better. I'm such a failure. Is that how I'm talking to myself? Or am I talking to myself like, okay, this was a really unfortunate event that just happened. And okay, how it happened. And now it's not the best thing that happened. It's not what I would have wanted. However, what can I learn from this? So being gentle with ourselves and just being like, wow, you really tried, you gave it your all, and it didn't work out that time, but what might I be able to do next time? So really tracking what is our thinking? We don't often take time to think about what we're thinking about, right? Which is our metacognition. We're just kind of like on autopilot. But if we were to pause and just be like, what are the thoughts? And sometimes some of us think our thoughts actually speak to us in our heads, and they're out loud and there's a voice. So if we're able to monitor and track that, then we can change it. We want to catch ourselves if we do go down the rabbit hole of negativity. We want to catch ourselves quicker and be able to shift it. And that's okay. That's a muscle too. Edit your outlook. Look at the event. Is it a curse or is it a gift? So something happened outside of me. I have the ability to stop here and just be like, okay, is all of this happening to me? Am I being in the victim role right now? Or am I looking at it as an opportunity and there's something for me to learn? There is that gift. Things are happening for me. And so if I can shift from things are happening to me to things are happening for me, then I'm able to push forward and life feels a lot lighter. We want to learn from our mistakes. We've talked about this as an opportunity for us to really focus on that post-traumatic growth piece. Some of this we already talked about. So choose your response. Viktor Frankl, who was a psychiatrist, and he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, has a very famous quote that says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that's where our personal power is. So something happens, we automatically respond. No, there's a millisecond sometimes. And if we just pause in that millisecond and we're able to choose how we're going to respond, that is where our control and our power lies. Maintain perspective. Something happened. We're experiencing that certain failure piece. That failure is a snippet in time. It's a certain moment in time that we're dealing with. It's not going to be forever. And so if we're able to see that this one setback here right now is not going to be the definition of the rest of my life, then I can put it in perspective and not have it expand into all aspects of my life. Set goals. Someone had mentioned that earlier. It's that setting the goals. Goals are something that we look forward to, something that we put our energy into achieving. And so if we can have, there's different types of goals that you can set. There's SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic or risky, depending on how you want it, and time with a timeline, right? But there's also another way of doing goal setting, which is the feeling that you want to have when you get the goal. What is it you want to experience? What do you want to feel? And if you can connect to that feeling, that's a different way of setting goals. Build your self-confidence. One way to keep our self-confidence is that even when we have setbacks, if we continue to honor our word and our commitment to ourselves. So if I told myself that I'm going to work out today, and then something happened, I had a really difficult conversation, and then I decided, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to work out. I'm not going to do any of the things I told myself I was going to do. That actually eats away at my own self-confidence. But if I can have that event have happened and then still be able to continue with my commitments to myself, that is one way to build that confidence. Develop strong relationships. We are meant to be very social, and our strong relationships give us more people to lean on when we are having struggles. And it's also an opportunity to contribute to those around us. Volunteering is a really, really great way to do this, to really nourish those relationships that we have and strengthen that, because we know that our goal is compassion and gratitude. Those lead us to happiness. People think like the goal is happiness. Yes, and happiness comes oftentimes through that gratitude and compassion.
And I want to tell you, when you see people volunteering at Sabeel, they always have smiles on their faces. The happiest people you will meet are at some of these Sabeel events, when they're giving out food, when they're packing things away. It's service really lights people up, and they are beautiful.
Yes. And there is a quote I read recently. It said, share your grief, you cut it in half, but when you share your joys, it doubles. And so part of the joy is even, being of service and being able to share our talents, our treasures, our time with people. Sometimes even just sharing our time with them is one of the biggest gifts that we can give. And then finally, be flexible. Flexibility is key. Resilient people are able to go with the flow. Things are going to happen, setbacks are going to happen, but the quicker that they're able to adopt that, the quicker we are able to adjust with that flexibility, things go smoother, and then we get that momentum going. And so that is Those are the 10.
That's a perfect way to wrap up. I wanted to give you a couple extra minutes to do that. I did ask, and I'm asking now, please, anybody who has a question, I'm looking at the chat and I will give it to Dina. Dina can also see the chat.
Mhm.
And someone here is thanking you. They're telling you it's a very thoughtful and well executed reminders to implement for everyone. We've had these talks quite a lot through this year. And do you have a favorite tip to share with parents who are dealing with kids who are thinking that they're not able to go to school and that they're failing to understand their lessons? They're the anxiety of, I just can't do this.
If you can just, so parents dealing with their children not
Yeah.
being able to go to school,
Yeah.
so the parent feeling like they
Failing,
can't
yeah,
do
the
it?
kids feel like they're going to fail if they can't be in class, and now you have to lift them up.
Tips, I mean, tips for it is, again, what is that failure part?
Mhm.
So there's there, and processing the grief, because the kids are going through grief too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, especially what used to be normal and now it looks very different. It becomes the child themselves is experiencing grief. And so being able to support and to acknowledge and to sit with that feeling for a little bit and then come up with other ways, and having them come up with a game plan as well. But even looking at what that success means. But before we get to what it means to fail and succeed with the child, really pausing and allowing them to express their feelings, and acknowledging their feelings, because they are going through a lot.
I hear that. I hear that with a lot of parents. That be grateful that we do have open parks and take them outside, even if it's just in your little family unit. I have seen such great response when I'm able to give an outdoor class where
Mhm.
parents, mom and dads are able to just get out of the house, still stay 6 feet apart, but have some fun with their kids in a park, or take advantage of in Orange County, you have beautiful places to hike. Okay, we're not all mountaineers, but look for the one that says easy and walk slowly and observe. You will be so grateful to get out of your little house and watch your kids see things they've never seen before. It's a rock, it's a lizard, it's a spider web that's round instead of triangular.
And with that, I wanted to also highlight to involve children in there's more than just book learning. And so there is the social aspect that children are missing with, if they're not in, even with the schools, the way that the restrictions are right now, there's still an element of their social networking that is that's changing, but helping the children come up with ways to contribute as well. I was talking to someone, it's like, even with Zoom, children also want to feel a sense of purpose, and they have something to give. And so if they're able to, if it's older students, if they're able to tutor younger students, or they're able to share some of their talents with others in different ways, there's a lot more learning that can happen outside the classroom.
And might I suggest something that just came to mind? Parents, make sure that you teach your children, or get someone to teach your children, maybe how to use these tools. Oh, there was someone in the room. Someone to use the tools. When I was teaching in Google Classroom, and there's a tool that lets children draw or make a funny face or choose a picture on Google. Instead of typing an answer, they can go and get a Google picture.
Mhm.
The excitement of being able to manipulate the computer that way, it just throws them in. Okay, your lesson's going to be slower, but the power of learning something like that's very adult is empowering, and we have to empower them to take a hold of that tool and enjoy it.
And maybe, I mean, honestly, a lot of the students today, like they're way more tech savvy. I mean, I've learned a lot from my nephews and just things that they've done with the computer, like what they're able to do. I'm just like, wow, I don't even know that. Like, teach me. This is so cool. So
And they
allowing
love
them
it.
also to teach us.
That's right. That's right. And that will build your relationship with your child. It's amazing. I love to see that. Okay, we have, I'm looking for questions, everyone. I'm looking up and down here. This is Dina, such a great source.
Yes. So in summary,
All right, then, Dina, just let's go on.
so the things to take away really, it's we are going to experience loss. And the question becomes, it's how we process and how we come back from it and how we create meaning. In that process, we want to make sure that we've cultivated relationships with people who can support us and who can help us through the process. In that experience too, sometimes if someone needs to reach out to a professional, there's nothing wrong with that. It's both and. You can have your community, your support network, and a professional who can help. And so both of those together can be a source of support. Failure is subjective. Let's recreate our relationship with that and look at it as the foundation for success. And remembering that success is us living a life that is that has to do with our values and our commitments. And then resilience is key. And so if we can find ways to make it a habit, if we can look at our sleeping, we can look at the, we control what we have control over. So our thoughts, our reactions, our responses in situations, find a way to be of service and contribute and be flexible. And so those are our takeaways. And then from there, any new questions that came up?
I'm looking, everyone's saying Jazakallah khair, that you're so inspirational for this presentation. It's a great way to start our week.
I have a question.
There we go.
Can I ask it instead of put it in the chat?
Yes, please. Mhm.
Okay. I just want to say thank you, Dina. Really, I can hear you. I can listen to you and learn from you forever. So having that 45 minutes to an hour, I think it's definitely not enough to hear you and learn from you. My question is, with all the learning that we go through and all the self-development and all the spirituality that we enhance ourselves, sometimes we just want to just go under a rock and cover ourselves and get away from our troubles. So what advice do you have? How do we build ourselves with that resiliency to push ourselves and get out of that rock and really face some of the issues that we have to face, knowing that tomorrow will be different?
That's a great question. And yes, it's real. And I think you hit it on two things, knowing that tomorrow is going to be different, having that mindset piece. But sometimes we do need to just go under a rock for a little. And I think oftentimes it becomes with all the self-development and all the tools that we have for ourselves, we start thinking or we start judging how we are feeling. Like, oh, I feel very overwhelmed right now. I shouldn't feel overwhelmed. So then now I feel like it becomes a pattern. But if we can just stop with the first feeling, so I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Sit with the overwhelmedness. So
Okay.
if we can allow ourselves to feel it, and at the same time, if we can make sure that we are tapped in with a social network, give ourselves a time, say like, okay, I'm gonna, and I know we've done this before where it's like, okay, we're gonna just like ruminate over this, or I'm gonna sit in under this rock. I'm gonna give myself an hour and then I gotta come out. But having someone else in your network who can kind of check in on that piece, or just sort of let them know, I'm going through some stuff right now. I'm going to sit under the rock. Okay, how long you want to be under there? Because at the end of the day, part of it is a choice, but we also want to honor the feeling. And so let's stay under the rock for a little. We don't want to stay under the rock for like a month, but maybe if I need to step away, or maybe the rock doesn't have to be where I completely hide. It can be where I may need to practice boundaries in certain things where I say no to stuff. So if I have a circle or people that I can lean on, they can help me see, okay, you may be overwhelmed right now. Is there anything that you can take off your plate to help you? So having a strong social support, tapping into professionals when needed, allowing yourself to feel those feelings and not judge yourself for having that feeling.
Thank you.
And knowing that tomorrow will be different.
And I like the one where if you've made a personal commitment to something, that you give yourself or find yourself an accountability partner, one person you trust. Or I've seen these beautiful young ladies here in Orange County with us on our hikes. They've just had a baby, but they're so committed to the group. They put that little baby in a backpack or on that little front carrier, and they're walking together because they want to continue to hike because they need that sisterhood. So they're still making it work. And their other friend has a baby too. She did it. She inspired her. Look, I use this carrier. Oh my gosh, it works. And now there's like 3 ladies on our hikes on the weekends. They have babies, little tiny ones on carriers, just hiking along because they need each other. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question, please?
Please.
Okay, thank you, Dina. I wanted to know how to, the brain doesn't work. It's like a room. You cannot, close the door on this thought and open another door for the other thought. Like, when you said learn from your mistake. Okay, so how am I gonna, the brain will go to default to blame ourselves always for the mistake that we did it. So how to close this door and open another one? Thank you.
So if I, and let me know if I heard it correctly, but it's that if there's a thought where a mistake happened and then I'm blaming myself, how do I shift from blaming to have a different relationship with the situation, to think
Yes.
differently about it?
Mhm.
So a part of it has to, we go back to, we may be conditioned, or we've spent, let's say, how many years of our lives have we been practicing maybe the negative self-talk, or when something happens, we think of, this is my fault, it was wrong, I should have known better. And we take out a hammer and we start beating ourselves. We've probably been doing that a long time. So if we can look at it and say, okay, you want my honest input is, I say when we practice those thoughts, if we had a child sitting in front of us, a 3 or 4-year-old child, and they made a mistake, how would I talk to them? What would I say? Would I turn around and say, this is your fault, you're always awful, you mess up everything, you never do anything right, this is just, how could you make this mistake, you should have known better? Or do I say like, oh, it spilled, okay, let's find a way to clean it up. Next time, let's maybe hold the cup, like let's say they spilled a cup of milk or something on the floor. How would we want to talk to them so that they're not afraid to do it, to carry a cup ever again? We would want to say something like, okay, next time, make sure you hold right now, let's get something, let's clean this together. It's okay, mistakes happen, you dropped it, you spilled it. Next time, make sure you hold it with both hands. And maybe, let's not fill it to the top, right? And so that way that we talk to them, that's how we really need to talk to ourselves. So if I can talk to myself and say like, if I accept and I know I'm gonna make mistakes, like all of us are gonna make mistakes. It's a given. So what's gonna help me? If I can catch myself, and I don't want to beat myself up. If I end up beating myself up like, oh, I should have known better. Oh my goodness, I just went to a class and I learned that I'm not supposed to beat myself up and here I am. We end up in a spiral. But if we can pause and say like, okay, this happened. So almost like we push pause and we say, okay, what am I thinking? How do I change it? And we practice that enough. And sometimes we're going to be very worked up. We're going to get caught up. We're not going to be able to shift very quickly. But the more we practice, it is a muscle. We have to practice it. The more we practice how to catch ourselves quickly and feed our minds, we have to feed ourselves empowering thoughts. So it's a mistake. Great, I'm human. Okay, clap for myself. I'm human. Now, how can I move forward?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a very profound question. I think we all go through that. Dina, you have been so enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd like to close out with Naziha telling us a little about what to expect next here at Seville. Naziha?
All right. Thank you, Dina, so much. It was beautiful, enlightening, inspiring lecture. And thank you, Karima, for the beautiful way that you moderate the session. We couldn't have done it really without you. Anyway, I want to thank everybody who participated, and I really got inspired with the session because I practice many kind of loss, profession, wealth, loved ones, and I felt each time that I grew more, and it pushed me each experience to help people who are going through the same kind of experience like me. So it made me grow, actually. So it hit me so much in the heart, this talk. And I just want to say to everybody, please, we could make mistakes, like Dina is saying. We are not perfect. And the more we are brave to create different way of lecture or programs, and the more we hear from you, we can grow more. So help us grow and succeed by suggesting new ideas. It's okay to make mistakes. We might sometimes choose a subject that may be not relevant to everybody, but it's okay. We learn from you what more you need. So please help us with this. Now, our next seminar is going to be with Dr. Farhad Chaudhry. She is amazing speaker, and she is PhD therapist, and she has done many research about medicine, about different things that we can benefit from her knowledge. She's going to speak about the thin line between psychiatry, like antidepressant, and psychiatry, because lots of times people are afraid to use medicine when it's really they have some serious problem with their loved ones, and sometimes the opposite. They just right away run to medication. So she's going to talk to us about this thin line, inform us about the difference between the two and when we should use one or the other. I just want to share one thing. A couple of days ago, I talked with someone who the family went through a lot, and more than one member of their family. And she said she found the best resource, free resource for psychiatric treatment, like cases that need medication at Harvard. It's called Harvard Psychiatry and Mental Health Center. So just note it down. And inshallah, anytime we have any resources, we'll put it on Sabil's website for people, to help people. Inshallah, we will grow more with your support and help. Thank you again, Dina, and thank you, Samar, for all the hard work, our Sabil CEO, for putting this tremendous work. And you need help, and anytime you need help, just say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. It's just like, find the way we support you to release the stress, because you are doing so much work. May God bless you.
And I did put the links in the chat, everyone. We have Sabil.us or Sabil at Facebook. Please send us a message. We're here to serve. This is our goal, to help make the community full and happy. And this is maybe where you're going to find that accountability partner. You're going to find that group that you need to join. You're going to find that family counselor that you need. We're here for you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will see you next month.
I just wanted to let everyone know it will be on the Sabil Facebook tomorrow, so this recording. So Dina, you will be there if you want to share it with people, and it will be archived forever, and your legacy will live on for people to learn from you and to